sustainability is environmental, social, economic. There's a balance between the three of them. And as not just the region and the country, but also the world moves towards pledging to things like net zero by 2050 or net zero by 2060, this big vision trickles down to a policy and a strategy, and then trickles down to the materials that we are going to use in order to fulfill that country's commitment to net zero.
We've started incorporating ocean-bound plastic, but the more manufacturers we can encourage to do that, the better it is for us. Because these supply chains that provide the ocean-bound plastic will become more robust.
I think it's important to make the sustainable choice like the easiest choice. If you give people a choice that's inherently sustainable and is also the cheapest thing for them or the easiest thing or the most practical or suits their needs, then you take the sustainability discussion off the table entirely. And we can then just inherently be where we want to be.
This is actually a question I often would ask manufacturers and producers of anything. A sustainable company and a sustainable product should actually be cheaper than a normal product because you build efficiencies.
The challenge with that is the availability of resource, because there's a lot of infrastructure in place for extraction and processing that you can piggyback if you want to make a product. Like ocean-bound plastic, you have to actively go out and seek that in a not particularly efficient way because the infrastructure doesn't exist. And so maybe there's something we need to provide as a society or as a region to sort of facilitate that collection.
Sometimes it's a challenge, but it's a challenge we have to rise to, and sometimes creativity is when you're constrained. You've got a budget, you want to be sustainable, you may have to be quite smart and do something a little differently, go for a different aesthetic.
We have the research team, but we also have a sustainable team, which internally help us a lot in choosing our material, and we ask from manufacturer to have documentation, and that's the minimum to get in our specifications. These certifications are helping because we always say you can't actually manage what you can't measure, right?
Because you have these rating systems and these standards, this is an easy indicator where in the past it may not have been transparent. You wouldn't have known if you're in a high-performance building or not. It just kind of looks nice or it doesn't look nice.
It's a challenge we find for projects in the region here is the lack of data for the whole supply chain to say, well, actually, where are these materials or products coming from? How are they being processed? How do we make sure that what we're bringing into the building is low impact?
When I meet people, when I meet like-minded people, we want to create partnerships as much as possible. But it's like preaching to the converted. And it is very difficult to convince people who are not into it what the benefits are, because they see it as having a cost impact to them, they see it as additional effort for them. It is to do with consumer behavior, and it has a lot to do, in my opinion, with regulation. There's no real regulation around it that forces people to really take action. It's much better if I compare today to 10 years ago. We have moved a lot, but it's very slow.
As a designer, I think our hope or our aim has to be to try to create things that you're not just forcing people to accept something that's environmental, but that is so compelling, they actually enjoy the product.
It's an opportunity for us as well, as specialists, as designers. If we have a client who really wants some electric vehicle charging outside their building because they like a Tesla and they want to own it, they want to drive it to the office, you can say, well, that's great, that's a really sustainable initiative. Have you also thought about these other things? And you can use these global products and these global ideas as a mechanism to leverage other opportunities and actually bring the sustainability conversation to the table where it might not have been there before.
And I think it's a battle at both ends. We've got Scott, who is constantly trying to make our products more sustainable, and me at the front end, who's constantly trying to have conversations with customers about long-term costs of owning office furniture. Because at the end of the day, if you have products that last longer and are built more sturdy, have a more residual value in them, you don't have to, that kind of that old saying of buy cheap, buy twice.